From the After 9 podcast studios, this is After 9 with Scott and Kat.
Hey now!
Hello, friends.
What's going on, Kat?
Oh, I'm, loving this October weather is what I'm loving.
We didn't really have a fall, by the way. People so excited for their pumpkin spice and stuff like that. And then we had like 2-3 weeks of nice fall temperatures. Now we're not even getting above 10. We will later on this week, but we're in a cold stretch right now.
A little bit, but there is a warmer stretch coming up. I actually think that this is a nice fall. I think so far it's been a nice fall. I wouldn't say it's a bad one at all. Just a perfect amount of rain. I think there's been a decent amount of sunlight. This coming weekend, or leading up to the weekend especially, is looking nice and warm in the high teens. So I'll take that. I think it's actually really nice.
We have a lot to get to on this episode, and we're going to have to solve some problems here because the institutions that we entrust to do this are going to be making some decisions, and I don't know how much input they're going to get from regular people. But that's one of the things that we try and reflect back from After 9 is the perspective of regular people. So number one, the Supreme Court of Canada right now is hearing a case that involves two minors who committed first-degree murder. And one of the things that the court is going to have to consider is when can we treat kids as adults when it comes to the criminal justice system? For anyone who's a longtime listener of After 9, you probably know I'm not shy about telling people I hate the Youth Criminal Justice Act, because I feel like what it does is it emboldens kids to go out and commit crimes, and it emboldens adults to recruit kids to commit crimes. And the example is what you see on the news every day. There are gangs, and there are adults in this gang, and they don't want to go to jail for jacking a car or for robbing a bank or a pharmacy, so they recruit kids, and they say to them, hey, if you go and steal that car, you're going to make $1,000 for 5 minutes worth of work. And kids will take it. They want $1,000. They want to feel like they fit in with the adults and the bigger kids. Mm-hmm. Well, they get caught, and now they're on the hook for doing stuff like this. And if it was just as simple as go and rob this pharmacy and bring me back the drugs and I'll give you some money. Not good, but it's certainly better than what's going on now, where they're commissioning kids to commit gang-style hits on people. When we've got kids going out to commit first-degree murder, I really don't know that the Youth Criminal Justice Act should apply here. We should know the names because it is a public safety risk, and we should punish these kids like adults. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong, especially when it comes to murder. I mean, come on, that's the worst thing you can possibly do. So I don't like the Youth Criminal Justice Act for that reason. Petty things, small things, that's solely on them, that they cannot link to any gangs. I understand that. Okay, you don't want to. You want to be able to give the child, and this is the criminal system that we have here in Canada, whether you like it or not. And I don't love it. I don't love it. We've talked about this before. We are a criminal justice system that assumes that people can be better. Okay, so when it comes to kids, that actually can be very much true. There's a lot of people that were involved in small crimes. I'm not talking about murder, but your theft and some gang activity even, that, if you will, grow out of it or realize that this is not the path for them, get on the right path and do the right things in life and is a good contributing member of the society. Great. But when we're talking about crimes that are killing people, that's where I draw the line. Even with some, and drugs for that matter do kill people too. So I would put drugs under that category as well. There's certain things that I don't have a lot of forgiveness for in terms of let's hide their name. That's going to let them live their life. Because you know what? At a certain point, I don't think a lot can be forgiven. So again, I'm okay with the petty theft things and things like that. It sucks. We don't want people to be recruiting children. Totally agree with you. But I think that there's a chance that those kids could become actually good members of society in the future. So if they want to work on that, great. But I think if you get busted twice, that's where I draw the line, especially with those cases.
Okay, so a second conviction, you could be treated like an adult, no matter what the conviction is.
Correct, yes. But when it comes to murder, no, absolutely not. If you're a 14-year-old that murdered someone because someone told you to, and you want to be a part of whatever group that is, and you did it for that reason, you know what? Names need to be named, and you need to be on trial for murder.
I feel like we just need to modernize our laws. I think that the government of the day, and it won't be this government, we know how they feel about crime and punishment. They're very much a rehabilitation government as opposed to a crime and punishment one. They don't want people in jail. They want people taking online courses about not stealing shit.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. If that's the way you want to go, that's your vision for the country. But for those who are serious about crime, The Youth Criminal Justice Act was always intended to not ruin somebody for a simple mistake they made as a kid. And that's why if a kid goes in and does something dumb, robs a store with a BB gun, that happens a lot, by the way. Kids have a harder time getting guns, so they go to Canadian Tire or wherever and buy themselves a handgun-looking BB gun. All right, well, it's scary. If you're working in the store that's getting robbed, you don't know that that's not a gun. So they've committed armed robbery, even if it wasn't necessarily a lethal weapon they were carrying. That's enough. If I'm an employer and I do a Google search on some right at a university student who's applying for a job and I see, wow, you committed armed robbery with a handgun, I don't want to hire that person. The way it's set up right now is you'd never know. The Youth Criminal Justice Act doesn't publish names. They don't want people to be named so their future can't be ruined. I'm sorry, but we live in a society with rules, and everybody has to follow the rules, regardless of your age. And if you commit a murder, a serious crime, if you're dealing illicit drugs, you should be treated like an adult because that's an adult crime. What is kid crime? Kid crime, stole somebody's bike. Well, that was a shitty thing to do, but we're not going to ruin your future employment. We're not going to prevent you from ever leaving the country again because no other country will let you in with a criminal record. We're not going to do that for something simple. But if you're a 14 or 15 or even 13-year-old who kills somebody, who carjacks someone, who uses a weapon in a crime, I don't think that you should get that kind of protection. I think that as tough a pill as it is to swallow, you're going to have to figure out how to recover like so many other past convicts.
Yeah.
It's just the only way it can go. To be treating kids like kids because they were a kid when they committed an adult crime, I don't know that that's going to fly much longer. And I don't think the public has an appetite for it. I think people are starting to realize it's time to get serious about this stuff. And if there's a lot of kids breaking into homes, terrorizing homeowners for their car keys and then stealing the car, that's an adult crime.
And we know that's on the rise, and we know that comes with the economy. Every time the economy's not great, we see things like that happening. And it's only going to get worse as we get closer to Christmas, I think.
Yeah.
You know, with the smaller things, with the theft under 5,000 or even, for that matter, maybe under 20,000. I don't know. Where are we at with that, looking at that? Has anyone stepped forward and said, I would like to make changes?
It's like they're so afraid to touch the criminal code, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
It's going to take somebody to stand up with a principled stance, and I think whoever does it, Justin, Jagmeet, Yves Francois, or Pierre Poilievre, someone's got to stand up in front of Canadians and say, listen, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We have a Youth Criminal Justice Act to protect youth who commit youth crime so that it doesn't ruin their life in the future, providing they go through all of the steps with complete compliance for whatever court orders they're given. If they can't do that, or if they commit an adult crime, all bets are off. It would suck to have to read the name of a 13-year-old cold-blooded murderer. But if they're a 13-year-old that committed cold-blooded murder, they should be named. And we shouldn't have to tiptoe around it and give them kid sentences and throw them in supervised custody in juvie when they should be in jail.
And by all means, do the investigations that need to be done surrounding that case. Was someone egging on a teenager? Who are they? Make sure that they're charged. Try to get that information. Hang it over the kid's head if you have to, right? Because if they know and they're looking at, oh my gosh, everyone's going to know my name if I don't cooperate, then maybe we make that something that we could work with, right? Like tell us about this group of people that told you to do this then, if that's what you're claiming. And then maybe we won't publish your name.
We can always give lighter sentences for those who want to cooperate with an investigation.
And I think that's okay if it puts more bad people where they need to be.
I think we need to move this conversation forward, and hopefully somebody does. But on that note, the OPP have put up a cash reward for information on a string of pumpkin throwing incidents in London. Police are offering $2,000 to help identify the perpetrators who threw pumpkins at transport truck windshields on Highway 401 and Highway 402 this past Saturday. Cops remind everyone, throwing objects onto a highway poses a serious threat to public safety. It can cause collisions, severe injuries, and death. So if you've got dash cam footage from one of the overpasses on the 401 near London on Saturday or the 402, let police know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume these are kids What do we do with these little shitheads that are throwing pumpkins at a transport truck on the highway?
Unbelievable. I remember when it was like you were a badass if you took a pumpkin and smashed it on the road, just walked and smashed it on the road, whether it was Devil's Night, the night after Halloween or whatnot. I remember that. I mean, that's happened before, right? In everyone's neighborhood. And that made you a badass. Now we're chucking it off of highways. No, thank you. That is so dangerous. And I do hope that those people get caught and busted. And I hope that people have a conversation with their kids too. Not to say that that's who this is, right? Is it someone's kid that was bored or didn't have anything to do and decided to do this with a friend or whatever? Have that conversation. Let them know this is a serious crime.
Parenting has a lot to do with it. I think there's a lot of parents who just assume that their kid's an angel and wouldn't do anything like that. But, you know, maybe have a healthy amount of skepticism. I don't think my kids would do anything wrong either. But I still keep a pretty close eye on them, and I still ask questions about what they're up to and who they're hanging out with and why they're doing what they're doing. I don't think that you need to risk your relationship with your kid just because you want to know what they're up to. It shouldn't be that way. As a parent, and you're always their parent, you should know that sort of stuff. Not always possible, but if you can find out information like this, that your kid is into smashing pumpkins on a freaking highway overpass, that's something you should intervene in.
Even use those stories as something to talk to your kids about. I always think, right? Like, hey, look, these whoever this was threw pumpkins on a highway. Do you know how much trouble you'll get in for doing that? Do you know how much... could you imagine your grandma, just whatever it means to them, was driving on the highway and somebody did that and she got killed because of it? Could you imagine even having those kinds of real life conversations of, wow, I didn't think of it that way, right? Because you never know what's going through whoever's mind that does it. They might really not be thinking about repercussions of killing someone. They probably just think they're being stupid and that the truck will smash it. You could hurt someone.
Coming up in just a sec, we're going to do the latest on Diddy, because I don't know if there's any other podcasts out there that are as diligent about reporting whatever daily events happen in this Diddy case. So if you're here for that info, don't worry, it's coming up. Before we get there, I want to take you back to yesterday. The Premier of Ontario was doing a speech to the MedTech conference. Said we're going to double down and reinvest in life sciences. Okay, great. Yeah, we probably need a lot more people in that industry. He had a few things to say. We'll play a little bit of it, and then we're going to talk about bike lanes.
You know, because of their hard work and the way we've set up the conditions and the environment, we've seen massive investment here in Ontario just over the last couple of years. We've seen over $45 billion in the EV sector, which is going to hit 50. You're telling me, Vic, about 20 billion in the technology sector, which is so important, and life sciences that I'll talk about, over $5 billion, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But there's so many great things. We always say, you know, you create the environment and the conditions for companies to come here, they'll invest and they'll thrive and prosper and grow, and so will their teams thrive and prosper and grow. But there's one thing in the way anywhere in the world, and it's called government. And we don't like government. We like getting government out of the way, cutting red tape and regulations, you know, making sure that companies can thrive here. And I'm so happy to be here for the annual MedTech conference. Before I begin,
That's government saying our biggest problem is government. And
well, you know what? It's honest.
He's not wrong.
It's honest. It's true. It's not wrong.
Listen, I know that it's a big talking point for some politicians. We're going to cut red tape. We're going to get government out of your way and let you do what you want to do. I admire the spirit of it, and I feel like he probably means that. He probably thinks, yeah, let's cut the red tape and let's get the businesses bumping again and let's get people shopping and more money in their pocket. I believe he believes that. But I don't know if any level of government knows how much government is embedded in our lives. I gave some examples last week. I want to have a fire pit in my backyard. Not allowed to. Government won't let me do it, even though I pay property taxes every single year. Another one that gets me is all these cities that are imposing this vacant home tax. Have you seen this nonsense?
Yes, I have heard of this before. If you're not using it, you're going to essentially get charged, even though it's your property. And I thought you could do what you want with it.
That's what I thought. That's the way it used to be. Yeah. When did that change?
Unless you are doing wrong on your property in terms of it being a danger to others, or even unsightly, like you haven't mowed your lawn in a million years, or like any number of those weird little things. That's not what we're talking about. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not hurting anybody.
Right.
So what does it matter what you do with your home?
So these governments, they are so desperate to say way they've done something on housing, even though almost none of them have. Housing starts are down again, and that's mainly a product of high interest rates. Investors don't want to get in until the conditions are right that they can build it at an affordable price, sell it at a profit, and they know people are going to buy it. And right now, all indicators are the real estate market is almost stalled. People are waiting for rates to come down a substantial amount more than they currently have. And when it comes to government trying to dictate what people do with their current homes, I'm amazed that we haven't had rioting in Ottawa over this. This is a government that says if you're not using your house, you must rent it out to someone else. No, thank you. This shouldn't be allowed. You know, we're going to talk about bike lanes in a sec because the province is going to overstep their jurisdiction and they're going to start ordering cities what to do with bike lanes. Maybe we should do it on this vacant home tax too. It is wrong to tell someone that they can't piss off to Florida for 6 months a year and leave their house alone at home. You know, I've got parents that, or family members anyway, that like to go down to Florida and like clockwork every year, right around U.S. Thanksgiving, third week in November, they go down to Florida. They don't come back until Easter or shortly after. Nobody lives in their home in that point, and they have no interest in renting their home to strangers and coordinating Airbnb-style cleanings and all this sort of shit. They don't want to do that. But the government, if they come around and see, no cars in that driveway for a couple of days, I'm going to keep an eye on this. Let's check the hydro bill. Ooh, they're not using much water. Ooh, let's see here. No lights are on.
Like, tell me you don't have better things to do. Like, that's going to be absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Government has no right to tell you what to do inside your home.
That's silly.
It's complete and total nonsense. And the fact that anybody has had to pay this is crazy. I don't care if you've got a home that sits empty 364 days a year.
Yeah.
It's your home.
I agree.
And if you don't want strangers in your home, you shouldn't have to pay a high tax just to not have strangers living there. It's complete overreach from the city of all people. We got to get rid of this policy. Somebody, Doug, you can do this. Use your powers over the municipalities and axe this vacant home tax. That is not going to solve a single homelessness problem in this province. Not one person who's currently living in a tent city is going to benefit from being able to rent out a house for 6 months a year while that person's in Florida.
Yeah, don't waste your time. Like, I think it's just such a waste of people's time to look into any of that. I really do. There's so many other things that we could be doing.
What are we paying property taxes for? What does that actually get us besides garbage pickup and snow removal?
Can I just say that I prefer, anyway, from this perspective of being a neighbor of people who do that, because I don't even know if they're snowbirds. They have multiple homes, and they're not home all the time. They have a house that's sitting, and good for them. I guess they can afford to do that. Fine. But they have a house down the street. I'd rather that than have like a bajillion people in one house.
Yeah,
I would.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. What is the problem here? They
paid-
want to have that home and that's their home and they own it, clearly. Let them do what they want.
I paid damn good money for my house, way more than I wanted to, but I wanted that house and I wanted to stay the way I wanted. If I want to go to Florida or Arizona or wherever for a couple of months, I don't have to rent out my house, and I'm sure as shit not paying a tax because I'm not home.
It's so stupid. There's probably, there are loopholes, but not without really disturbing other people around you. Like, for example, if that happened to a family member of yours and they said, hey, I'm going to Florida. I don't want to get in trouble here. Can you go to my house, turn on some lights and stuff? And nobody should have to do that. But I'm sure that I hope there are at least some loopholes if this goes through, because that's ridiculous.
I'm shocked nobody started a service. Hey, if you're going to be away, we'll go to your house twice a week and flush the toilet and run the dishwasher and turn your furnace or adjust the thermostat.
Yep.
It's crazy. Doug, red tape, tackle that problem. That's a big, big problem.
I would totally play that petty game if that was me. I'd be like, yeah, okay, you want that? Fine. Then I'll go there, get someone to go there and run the water for a bit and flush a toilet and there.
Make it a real pain in the butt for them to prove you weren't home.
Gosh.
This is a municipal thing. Cities do this, and I completely disagree with it, as you know. But another conflict is coming in the balance of power between cities and the province. For those who don't know, Canada has a federal government, and they just look after federal things. Defense, security, actually all the things that are controversially in the news right now, all fall to the feds. Then provincially, they look after our health care and our education and things like that. And the municipalities, the cities below them, do have a certain level of accountability to the province because the province sets the framework for the municipalities. Well, one of the things that you may have noticed over the past number of years is a big push to build bike lanes. And we live in Canada and we have winter 6 months a year
We do.
minimum. And those bike lanes end up sitting empty for a lot of the time. However, they have to be there on the off chance that in February, when it's minus 50 outside, somebody's riding their bike to work. And that's fine. I don't think anybody really has that big a problem with bike lanes. I think the problem that people have is where they're putting them. And to make the bike lanes more popular, some city officials in some cities have jammed them right down the middle of Main Street, right down the middle of King Street, or whatever Main Street is in your town. Right down the middle, they've cut out a lane of traffic for this to happen, so the cars are down to one lane and bikes are in the other. We don't have room for it, especially in the older cities. Hamilton, Toronto, even Kitchener, downtown. There's not room for it. But it's an environmental ideology that tells them we need these bike lanes because if we build bike lanes, more people will ride bikes.
Which isn't true.
It's not true, and it's not even addressing the reality of where we live. Would these bike lanes be better served just 1 or 2 blocks over on a less busy street? Yeah, and that's what the province wants. So now the province has ordered all municipalities that put in these bike lanes that, against the wishes of the vast majority of their residents, these mayors and councils jam these bike lanes right down busy streets, and now they're going to have to be accountable. The province wants to see from every one of them the data they use to support building a bike lane, the data on how much it's being used, and what are the alternatives. So if do you want to use Kitchener as an example?
Sure, let's use Kitchener, yeah.
Right downtown
Yeah.
Kitchener, which was only 2 lanes in each direction to begin with. It's a downtown core in a major city. They ran a freaking bike lane right down the middle of it.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why would we do that? There's already not enough room for cars and the LRT, which runs down the same area.
I don't even think it's a fair ask to put it on side streets. I don't understand how anyone will complain about that other than, yes, the infrastructure, sure. So now you have to spend a little bit of money maybe to get it out of the way. But like we were saying, you assumed, or somebody along the line assumed that you put in these bike lanes and make it easier for the people on bikes. Maybe the ones who are currently using it, it's not going to necessarily encourage anyone who's not, because as a driver, I see people on bikes not having a fun time at all, and vice versa. A lot of drivers not having a fun time with those on a bike. It's not encouraging me to go grab my bike and bike downtown when I could. I'm not that far from downtown. I could certainly bike downtown, but seeing what I've seen, it's not making it any easier.
You know, it used to be that you could ride your bike just about anywhere, including on the sidewalk. Somewhere along the line, they changed that. As someone who walks his dog 3 times a day, I kind of appreciate that. When a bike is coming, I think, oh, shit, all right, I got to pull the dog over, get him on the grass, let the bike go by. It's a little inconvenient. Far less inconvenient, though, than driving down the street with somebody riding on a bike and you don't know what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. Some of these people are using bike lanes and they don't even know the rules of the road. They wouldn't even pass a driver's test. And you have to know the rules of the road to ride on the road. It's scary.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times I've seen somebody open up a car door, not even look? And I thought, if somebody was going by on a bike, there'd be a serious collision here. They don't need to coexist on busy roads. Get these bike lanes into the side streets. They don't need to be there. But that's not even the real issue. The real issue here is the province is going to start telling cities how to run their city. And mayors are not going to like that. I think Doug is picking a fight that he's looking forward to. And I think he's going to win it because I think the public is on his side here. But nonetheless, it's going to be a fight with the mayors and chairs that really want these bike lanes right down Main Street, cutting off traffic.
And generally speaking, though, I mean, have you heard much about these strong mayor powers and things that have changed since then? Because I have.
Yeah?
I have heard some things.
What'd you hear?
I can't say what I've heard.
Come on.
I can't say what I've heard. But what I will say is it's interesting if that's the case that the mayors are complaining because they're kind of doing similar to a lot of people with their strong mayor powers. They get to change budgets completely without, I think, if I'm not mistaken, any consent, for example.
No consultation.
No consultation. So I think it's kind of like, it's messed up if they're going to complain about that.
I'll use an example of where I live, in Burlington. And we've got a mayor who is The mayor is
Trying to find a good word.
trying to find a good adjective where people aren't going to jump all over me for being
Okay.
overly partisan.
Strong-minded?
Her and I disagree strongly on some fundamental policies.
Okay.
Like, if it were up to me, for example, I wouldn't have jammed people with a massive property tax increase. In fact, I would have probably decreased property taxes right now. Now, the current mayor can't understand how we can possibly cut taxes when there's such ambitious spending plans. And it never even crosses any of these mayors' minds, let alone mine, to cut spending. You know, as a taxpayer, it's infuriating to see these buses driving around all day long with one person on it or two people on it. Certain cities don't, I'll say it, certain cities do not need to have their own transit system. It would be great for you to be able to know, hey, every hour there's going to be a bus coming by and it'll take me to the mall. Okay, that's great. It's convenient for you. But it would be much cheaper for the taxpayers to buy you a damn Uber chit than have these buses fully staffed driving around polluting all day long.
We talked on our radio show about the new the Tesla bus. I don't know if that's what they call it. What are they calling that thing?
The cyber van.
The cyber van. Thank you. So Elon's vision is to have the cyber van available and kind of eliminate the bus. And I am not opposed to that. It's a smaller vehicle that's going to be able to get people from A to B in lots of cities all over U.S. and Canada if this vision of his goes through. Something like that makes way more sense to me. Hell, even switching in those non-busy areas, because I know what you're talking about. And yes, there's some busy areas. I think about, okay, let's go back to KW with the university, or even to London with the universities and colleges being so prominent. More buses are great.
Great.
Students use them.
No
Student
problem.
ID, great. Use them, utilize them. There's a lot of other cities, though, that seem to have quite the rigorous schedule and not a lot of people on it. And I'm wondering how many taxpayer dollars are going to shit with buses just running around all day.
Empty. And the thing is, these mayors think, oh, we have to do transit. We have to do transit. And again, not every city needs a full-blown transit system. So mayors are all like, you know what? Not only do we have to have transit, it's got to be electric. We got to get electric buses. Those are over $2 million a piece. So great. You took a perfectly fine working hybrid bus off the road, and I still like hybrid technology way more than full-blown battery powered. I think hybrid is an interesting possibility until we get to hydrogen. However, so now we're going to replace a perfectly good hybrid bus with a fully electric bus, and the end result is still going to be nobody rides the damn thing. Yeah. Why do we sink so much money into this? There's an easy place to cut a little bit of money, but none of these mayors wants to stand up and say, we're going to cut costs a little bit in transit because of I don't even know if there would be backlash. I think the average person can look at their own city. Maybe you live in Oakville. You could probably look around at your city and say, we don't need a fully staffed transit system doing nothing but laps around the city all the time with nobody on these buses. You know what? Why don't we take those buses, sell them to Toronto or Kitchener or London or Hamilton, which does need a proper transit system, and save everybody some money?
You wonder if something like a difference, if you blew it up to say, right, and started fresh in some of these cities. And again, I want to dismiss like your Torontos and your Waterloo regions and all the places where there really is a lot of heavy traffic on transit. The ones that are like mediocre, I wish that they would test that theory. Why don't we have a hybrid van? And you tell them when you're at the bus stop, and that kind of like an Uber, they can pick you up.
It'll be there in 10 minutes.
But it's a similar, make it a similar cost as the city bus. You're going to have even more people using it, though, because we know that Ubers are expensive. So if you had something like that was just a van that went around, and maybe they did stick to that schedule, and if it's full, you got to wait for the next. Like, I don't know how it would work. And again, it's really for those who are dead. It's just for the dead areas. And everybody knows the routes that are popular and not popular, and times a year maybe that they're more popular than others.
Another example, they raise taxes, right? Because we got to buy this and that. We got to go green. So in Kitchener, specifically, they're replacing all of the public works equipment, like all of the lawnmowers and hedge trimmers and all these things that we work perfectly fine to cut grass and cut hedges, replacing them all with battery-operated ones. Okay, but we don't need to do that. Hey, if when that current lawnmower is dead and you can't fix it anymore, Then, when it's time to replace it, we should go out and replace it maybe with something a little greener. Maybe we're already using the best technology that we should be. Maybe it's not a big deal to use a little bit of gasoline in a lawnmower if it cuts a massive area. But no, they want to throw out perfectly good stuff to replace it, and it doesn't make sense. Not right now when people are broke and you guys are raising property taxes on people. It just doesn't add up. But I think it's coming to a showdown, and I think if I had to look down the line, the end result is going to be an even more popular Doug Ford. He's at 45% in the polls right now. That's the highest a premier has had in a long time. He's probably going to be even more popular if we just tell these municipalities, these cities, and these regions, either get it together or we'll get it together for you. Because the average person is not getting the response they want from their city hall. And that's why we have all these bike lanes everywhere, because city hall's not listening. So if there's a power above city hall, I'm okay with exploring this to see where it goes, and hopefully we can reach a compromise that works for taxpayers, not for politicians. And if that's the goal here, I'd be all in favor of it. One more thing, Diddy is in the news, and in this case, it's a weird thing, but I kind of find myself siding with Diddy on this one. Yesterday, he filed a petition in a Manhattan court for prosecutors to disclose the names of his accusers in his sex trafficking case. The lawyer said in a filing Tuesday that he must know the identities of his alleged victims to prepare for trial. He doesn't know who's accused him.
Yeah.
Like, there's so far, I'm assuming he's been told what the charges are, but he hasn't actually been told, I don't know, Janie Smith from LA says you raped her in a Macy's bathroom back in 95. Right. He doesn't know who's accusing him of doing what?
Right.
That seems weird to me.
So, and this is specifically in the sex trafficking charges, which is the criminal, in case you're wondering, because there's two different things happening here. Think of it as two different things. There's criminal charges. There's what he's been charged with, and the reason why he's in jail is those criminal charges, sex trafficking being one of them. The other one are individual lawsuits being filed, which are John and Jane Doe's currently, just so everyone knows. We have no names named there, too. So he's talking specifically about the sex trafficking charges. The only reason why I know that they didn't list names yet or give details yet was to protect those victims. That's what they do.
Understood. And that should be a priority.
And keep in mind, again, just because he's on the inside right now doesn't mean he doesn't have power on the outside. And bad things could happen to these victims. I think we all agree. And I mean, I think that bad things could happen to these victims if they give too much information far ahead of this trial. The trial's in May. He can hold the fuck out until before, and then they can do whatever due diligence that he and his team needs in order to, if these victims are taking the stand, which I assume might be the case, might not be though. It's not even necessary in some cases.
They're not obligated to.
If they have enough proof, enough evidence, or they just want to put forward said proof and evidence, they do not even need to name names as long as the evidence is there. So I disagree with you where I don't think that Diddy should know these names. I don't think these names should be publicized because he's a very dangerous man and he's got a bigger circle than I think we all know. So I don't trust that something bad won't happen to these people if their names are named. So I hope that the judge does not hand them out ever if they don't feel the need to. The prosecutors, I mean, if they don't feel they need to, they shouldn't. If they'll probably be able to get that guy behind bars forever without putting those people in danger, any more danger than they've already been in.
So here's my concern. My major concern here is I believe that he is guilty as sin. I believe that very, very soon, a lot more is going to start to come out, and you're going to see it's not just Diddy. It was an entire industry thing, and there were so many people that knew this was going on, others that enabled it, others that helped organize it. There's a lot of people involved in this, and they have a lot of reason to be worried. What I don't want is to go through this whole thing and then find out probably around the end of June next year, Diddy has been convicted. Great, he'll go to jail for the rest of his life. And then on appeal, the case gets thrown out because we denied him the right to know who his accuser was. That's my major concern here. And if they've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's and they're sure he doesn't need to know this, okay, fine. I just want to make sure that nobody is setting him up to be successful in an appeal when he is inevitably, in my estimation, convicted.
Mm-hmm. I we'll see what ends up happening. But again, I just worry about the victims in this case. I really do. And I don't even want to call them alleged victims because there's so many of them at this point. By the way, I never got to ask on the radio show because I saw this pop up today. Mm-hmm. Do you think it is inappropriate for people to dress as Diddy for Halloween this year?
Wildly.
Like, I can't believe how many reports we're hearing of people that are buying baby oil as part of their costume. I just, are people aware of how, sensitive of an issue this is?
I think the big problem here, especially with Diddy costumes, is that they've said all these accusations loosely, not specific, but generally he's accused of trafficking and racketeering and yada, yada, yada. I don't know that the average person really understands what happened or how deep it went in Hollywood. And when some of the big names come out, some of them much bigger than Diddy himself, then I think people are going to understand the gravity of what he's accused of and what he's been doing for 25 plus years now. Right now, people hear, Diddy and the baby oil, I'm going to dress up like that as Halloween, without fully understanding. And that's kind of the way the system has worked, in that we don't know specifics, so people don't know exactly the extent of what a POSE is.
Yeah.
So once those start to come out, hopefully people will realize. But if you're wondering right now, should I dress as Diddy for Halloween? I'd say no. It's not a good idea. If you do it, I wouldn't put too many pictures online, because it's not going to take long for those pictures to resurface after this court process is done. And ask yourself how well you think those pictures are going to age.
Yep, I totally agree. Think of yourself. Think of yourself.
Think of yourself. Protect your job. We got to go, everybody. Have yourselves a great hump day. We will see you right back here tomorrow with more After 9.
Goodbye, friends.
There's a scandal as Suga from the K-pop boy band BTS has apologized for driving an electric scooter while intoxicated, for which he was not only fined, but has also had his license revoked. Koreans need a license to drive one of these. In New York, you'll see them being ridden down Broadway by a baby eating a turkey leg.
There's a restaurant listed in Austin, Texas that's gotten a lot of buzz online. According to Forbes, ethos_ATX is not real. Every post is the work of AI. Yeah, I could have told you that. The food is good and the chefs are smiling. If the bear has taught me anything, it's this. The food will not be Michelin starred unless the chefs are getting into a knife fight.
In a new government initiative, Russians are being urged to conceive children during breaks at work to help the country's declining birth rate. Gives a whole new meaning to the phrase, there's cake in the break room.